get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Ryan Lavarnway. You can check him out at ryanlavarnway.com. Ryan, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Athlete Entrepreneur Series, we had on Benny Fowler, who Ryan also knows, had on his podcast. That was a great episode. I had on kind of a panel of football players, Brent Novoselsky, Jamara Williams, and Wendell Davis. And some other really good ones was Tracy DeFord, Sean Springs, and Dante Whitner, which was part of the Players Impact, which is kind of a platform where players can invest in companies. So those are some great episodes to check out. That and many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. The Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So, Ryan, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing relationships, amazing content, and most importantly, focus on running their business. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to how to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the planet what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. Ryan actually has a podcast, which we'll go into. You could email us at support@rise25.com or check us out at rise25.com to learn more. I'm excited to introduce Ryan Lavarnway. And as I introduce him, there is a video piece to this. I'm going to share my screen here because he has some amazing highlights to take a look at. And so as I'm introducing you, Ryan, I figured it'd be appropriate to, just one of my favorite highlight clips online here. Okay. So this is Ryan Lavarnway's 3-hit, 6 RBI game, 2 home runs in here. So I'm going to play this and we'll talk about, it's an interesting story of how you got to this place, actually. I guess I would assume maybe a couple days before or whatever amount of time you had no idea or thought that you were even going to be in the big league. So we'll talk about that as well. But just so people can watch a video here. But Ryan Lavarnway is a former Major League Baseball catcher, World Series champion, Olympian, and Ironman. Ryan actually played for 8 MLB teams over his 10-year career, winning a World Series with the Boston Red Sox in 2013. He participated in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics with Team Israel. Ryan was actually the 3rd ever MLB draft pick out of Yale University, where he led the NCAA in batting average and slugging percentage. Now he does leadership coaching. He's a keynote speaker on topics such as leadership potential, winning mindset, change management, thriving through change, and high performance. And he's spoken at Harvard, Yale Law School, Kent State, and many, many more. As we're looking at this video here, I love the shrug, like you're like, yeah, I got this type of thing. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeremy.
So I want to start off with, we're watching this video, but talk about what happened before, because with the Yankees and leading up to this, because you would never thought that this would have happened.
Yeah, I really had never put a lot of thought into the Cincinnati Reds until 24 hours before this game. I was playing for the Yankees in AAA, and coming off an oblique injury, I was playing terribly. I was playing very poorly for the Yankees. And I actually got released from AAA. And then I got a flat tire in the parking lot before I could leave the stadium. So it was really a low of all lows for me. I'm on the phone with my agent, like, what am I going to do? Can I get another job? And he was saying, well, it's the middle of the season. All the teams already have their catchers. Nobody needs you right now. And
how do they release you? Talk about that for 1 second. Like, do they bring you in? Do they give you a call? What does releasing you look like?
Yeah, so we had played a day game in Scranton, And after the game, it was maybe 4 o'clock. Manager calls me into his office and just says, "We're going to give you your release. And, there's not a lot of playing time for you here anymore. The organization decided to make a change. So we're going to go ahead and release you." It's not a question. It's not a conversation. They're telling you this is happening. So I say, "Thank you very much." I pack up my locker and I start thinking about all the things that I need to do now, right? Like, I have a lease on an apartment in Scranton, and furniture and internet and water power contracts, and not to mention my income just got cut off. So there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of organization that needs to happen. Not to mention, I get on the phone with my agent. What am I going to do now? Can you get me another job? And like I said, my agent said, "Well, it's the middle of summer. Everybody already has their catchers." But what happened in the next 2 hours, since it was a 4 o'clock release, since we had played a day game in Scranton, that evening, the Cincinnati Reds had 2 injuries to their catchers, and they needed a able body. So I was available.
How did they find you?
Physically able. I think when someone's released, I think there's an email to all the other GMs, and it's made known who's available. And they basically called and said, "How fast can you get here? We need a warm body to fill up a uniform and catch our game tomorrow. You're going to start in the big leagues tomorrow if you can get here by the game." So I packed up my apartment. The guy that was taking my spot on the roster in Scranton, I had him sublet my apartment really quick overnight. My wife ended up driving from Scranton, Pennsylvania to Cincinnati. I got on the 6 a.m. flight because I needed to take a physical. I needed to get my uniform. I ordered catcher's gear overnight that was red to match, batting gloves, cleats, all the stuff. Started watching video on the pitcher I was going to catch, and went out and had the best game of my life in my Cincinnati Reds debut.
That was some type of record, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was most RBIs in a Reds debut.
Wow. And then how do you, from a business side, do they have you sign some kind of contract at that point? I mean, everything, they need you there quickly. So like some of that stuff, I mean, I'm thinking as a player, you just figure it out. But what do they do? I mean, there's a lot of logistics. I didn't even think they don't even have equipment for you fitting your body and your size too. So how do they do the business side of things for that?
The business side is pretty commonplace at this point. You sign a contract that's prorated for the season, but you get paid per day based on what level you're at. So I was in Scranton, Pennsylvania, making $23,000 a month with the Yankees, and then I'm in the big leagues making slightly over league minimum, which at the time was maybe $650K. You get paid 183 days a year, so you can do the math. It was maybe about $4,000 a day.
That's pretty amazing. So after that first game, what are you thinking now with your big league career?
So I remember exactly what I was thinking. After the game, there's cameras in my face. They're thinking, "What an amazing game. You haven't hit a homer in years." And I'm thinking to myself, I hit a homer last week in AAA. It's still baseball, right? But the story was, you haven't hit a homer in the major leagues in over 2 years. And it really is a different level. It's a different threshold of competition. What I was thinking at the time, and I said this to the media, I said, I feel like a cat with 9 lives, because yesterday I felt like my career was dead. And today I'm here having the best game of my life. This is going to be a highlight of my career after the lowest of lows yesterday. So I was thinking, this is going to, I feel like a cat with 9 lives. And then the next day, I remember I wasn't in the lineup. And
Why?
as I walked into the dugout before the game, our manager looks at me and says, "Hey, I know you had a pretty good game yesterday, but it's the other guy's turn."
I'm not going to ask, is that bad managing? Because that is kind of odd, right? It's like you give someone who has the hot hand the playing time, right? But I'm sure there's other things at play there. I do want to get into mindset, because I think, in my opinion, from the sport of baseball, there's no better person or sport to talk about failure, right? Because even if you look at Hall of Famers, if you get out 7 out of 10 times, you're a Hall of Famer, right? So there's a lot of failure in baseball. But where did you start your MLB career? What team?
I started in the big leagues with Boston in 2011.
Got it. Let's talk about mindset. And I know you talk about mindset in your talks a bit. So we could start with one of the things I know you talk about is why not you?
Yeah, for me, I think the first thing anybody needs to do when they start to think about mindset for peak performance is give yourself permission to be the game changer, right? At the end of the day, we are all just people. And a lot of us may believe, I know I believed this, is who am I to be the excellent guy? Who am I to be the superstar or the one that people cheer for? Who am I to be the best player on the team? And that mindset needed to change before I could actually become the best player that I could be. And it started in high school for me. My family moved into the district for the best high school baseball team in Southern California, El Camino Real High School. I was a 2005 high school graduate, but going into high school, I was kind of a pipsqueak. I was young for my grade and I was a late bloomer. And in high school, I don't know if you were maybe one of these people. I certainly was, where I go into high school, I'm 14 years old and I'm small, and you're playing against grown men, right? 19-year-old.
I think freshman year I was 6'2", 150.
Shut up.
And I was up against some people who were, 250, right? So yeah, I could see that.
You say 6'2", 150?
Yeah.
My freshman year, actually my sophomore yearbook has me listed at 5'4", 135.
Oh,
so even you were a foot
the
taller,
making of a professional athlete right there.
right? You and if you look at me now, you're like, how did this even happen? But I'm 5'4", 135. I had been a little league all-star, but so what? And I'm looking at these players that are supposedly my peers. These are giants, and they're all bigger than me. They're all stronger. They're all faster. They're all better. They've all been on the varsity team before. And I'm looking at my coach, who I desperately want to notice me, and just staring in the face at all of my inadequacies. And I had my identity tied to, like, I'm not good enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. And it was not until going into my senior year when this coach, who I had so much respect for, he noticed my growth before I did. Not just physical growth, but ability and talent growth. And he said, Ryan, why not you? He had asked, who's going to bat fourth for us this year? Who's going to be the best hitter on this team? And I knew it wasn't me, but I was so desperate for his attention, I raised my hand. And he said, why not you? And that really unlocked, well, let's question all of these limiting self-beliefs that I've been tied to for all this time, because I have gotten a little bigger. I have gotten a little stronger and faster. And the only thing that's holding me back is myself.
Ron, I know hope is not a strategy, right? Because you were doing things off the field to get noticed and to get into the lineup and excel. What were you doing behind the scenes that most people didn't see?
Yeah, I was the hardest worker on the team and maybe on the planet. And you can see this book behind me right here, this big leather-bound book, if I can quote Ron Burgundy. This is a gift my wife gave me as a retirement present, and it has, articles, positive, not all the articles, but positive articles from all the way back to high school through my big league career. And when she gave it to me, I started reading articles from high school when I was laughing at the things I used to say to these reporters because I had no idea how to talk to the media yet. But one thing that was remarkable to me, and it actually made me cry and really, really proud, really more than anything else, through high school, through college, and into the pros, every coach that I had said two things. Number one, how unlikely it was that I would achieve the success that I was achieving. And number two, that I was earning it through being the hardest worker they'd ever had. And that makes me proud because I know that I shouldn't have had the success I had. And it all came through mindset and hard work. And that started in high school. In the fall semester, baseball is a spring sport. In the fall semester, we had baseball first period of the day. School starts at 8. We would meet at the gym at 6 and work out as a team 6 to 7, then have the hour to grab breakfast and drive to school. Well, I got there at 5. So I'm there an hour before everyone else. I get twice as much work in. And that really continued throughout my career.
going to mindset, obviously, I love that story about the Yankees, right? It's a terrible day. It's like, who would have thought? You get let go, you have a flat tire. What's another low point moment in your career that you remember back that you had to, bounce back from?
When I was with the Orioles, 2015, it was the first time I wasn't with the Red Sox, and I had been with the Red Sox organization for 7 years, up and down and up and down for 4 years with the big league team, minor league player of the year 3 years in a row. So the Red Sox had seen me succeed. They believed in me. I went to the Orioles for a new opportunity, and the thing you don't understand about going to a new team is that they've never seen you fail, but they've also never seen you succeed. So they don't know what you're capable of. They don't know what you were doing right when you were really good. And all of a sudden, you've got a new coach, a new set of eyes, new opinions. So I actually made the opening day roster for the Orioles in 2015, which was great. And I played like poop for them. I was a bad Oriole. I played great defense. Don't get me wrong. I played great defense. I was a great teammate, but I hit maybe under 200 for them. And hitting was always my calling card. So 60 days in, the Orioles released me. And I knew I deserved it. And I always feel like, I was called up and sent back down 26 times. Maybe 20 of those times I was playing well enough to stay. But the 6 or 7 times that I got sent down where I knew I earned it, those were tough because I had my opportunity and I blew it in those moments.
Yeah, there's a story behind each one of those being let go, right? The next piece, is leadership. I know you talk about leadership. I've heard you talk about the World Series team. So we'll talk about that because that was not like, oh, they're a shoo-in, right?
Yeah.
At all. So talk about leadership and why not more, what that means.
Yeah, to me, leadership is about encouraging people to be their best and empowering them to be their best. Um, I have 2 stories I want to tell. One was from college. Now that I had come out of high school and really started believing in the why not me concept and that mantra of I can be the person that makes the change, the person that is the best player, I started setting goals for myself, knowing that I could achieve them. And I had a very average freshman year of college. I got to play, which was great, but I wasn't anything special. And I saw our first baseman get awarded All Ivy League award. I mean, like parades, bells are going off in my head. I'm like, oh man, if I set my mind to it, I know I can achieve that goal. But like, I saw your face right there, Jeremy, and anybody listening, like All Ivy League, you're probably thinking, whoop-de-doo, right? Nobody cares, right?
I mean, I
A
think
little
baseball's
bit.
a hard sport, but I think Ivy League has a reputation of, not being the best competition out. Like when you talk about Southern California high school
Yeah.
baseball, I envision the cream of the crop, right? Yeah.
And that's exactly my point now in
But I've
retrospect.
played against Division III athletes and they smoke everyone. So I don't have so,
My point is that I thought I had this incredible goal after seeing a teammate who was, a role model of mine. And I said, oh, that's going to be my goal. And I talked to our hitting coach about it. And he is the one that raised the bar for me. And he said, why not more? Why would you set your goal at All Ivy League when you can win All American? And now All American, there's some recognition there. Now this is something worth actually doing. And the thing about setting a goal higher is when you set it a little bit out of reach, where you have to change what you do and who you are to embody the person that deserves that goal. That's exactly what happens is you up your game, you up the level, the quality of who you are and what you do. So I changed everything. I ended up finding a weight vest and wearing it under my clothes every second I was awake. I was in the batting cage. I wasn't hitting baseballs anymore. I was hitting volleyballs because they were heavier, and now I'm getting stronger through contact. Right? I kept being the hardest worker, but I upped everything I did in my focus And that very next year, I was the first All-American baseball player at Yale in 25 years. So I think about that coach raised the level of what I thought was possible. And if he hadn't done that, I'm confident I would have won All Ivy League, but not All American.
Made you think bigger.
Yeah.
You said there was a couple stories.
Yeah, the other story in the big leagues, and this is great leadership. A lot of times leadership has to happen through tough conversations. And I want to call out Terry Francona, who is my favorite manager in the big leagues that I ever had. He was sending me down. He was my first manager in the big leagues with the Red Sox. He's also my last manager in the big leagues with the Cleveland Indians at the time. And I wasn't going to make the team out of spring training. He called me into his office. When they said, "Hey, the manager wants to talk to you," I knew what the conversation was going to be, right? I had been sent down plenty of times.
Never a good sign.
It's not good when the clubby's like, "Hey, Skipper wants to talk to you. Sorry." You walk into the office, you know what he's going to say. And as he says, "Hey, Barney, we got to make a move." He's got this deep, burly voice. I try to make it easy on him, right? I'm a pro. I get it. I'm going to go to AAA, work my butt off. I'll see you soon. And he says to me in that moment where he's having the hard conversation that he knows I don't want to hear, he still takes the time to inspire me. He says, "Ryan, sometimes being a really good self-evaluator doesn't serve you. Sometimes you got to be just dumb enough to think you're better than you are, and then you live up to that expectation."
One of my favorite stories is about the Boston Red Sox World Series team. And I've heard you talk about this, a couple things. And one of the things was there were some veterans that came on, and that's what I think of when I'm thinking of the leadership. Can you talk about the influence of that and a little bit of the backstory behind that?
Yeah, that's so I think about that as teamwork and peer leadership. And peer leadership can be just as impactful, if not more, than leadership from someone in a position of authority. Peer leadership is when the expectation is so high, you either get on the boat or you get off the boat, right? That Boston Red Sox World Series team was not the best team in the league that year, objectively. We were not the best team in the American League. We shouldn't have even made it to the World Series. That was the Detroit Tigers' year to win. In their starting rotation, the Tigers had 5 people that ended up winning Cy Youngs. They had 3 of the best hitters on the planet at the time, including Miguel Cabrera, who's the best right-handed hitter of our generation. So the Tigers should have won. But starting from day one of spring training, we started talking about our goal as a Red Sox team. We had lost 97 games the year before. And the Boston writers, who are not always friendly, they called us an unmitigated disaster. The new players we brought in were not necessarily all-stars. We brought in guys that were clubhouse guys. So when I introduced myself to Johnny Gomes in spring training, he says, "Hey, how you doing? We're one day closer to the World Series parade." And we start talking about our goals. When we're in first place in the first month of the season, they say, "That manual scoreboard at Fenway Park on the Monster, you don't need to manually move the things anymore. Just paint Boston in first place because no one's coming for us." And we spoke into existence. We talked about our goals and we embodied the things we wanted so much that get on the boat or get off the boat. We're pulling the rope in this same direction and everyone's pulling. And if you're not pulling with us, then get out, walk out the door.
And then, I know that you've talked about why not us. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that's kind of the collective chip on our shoulder, right? All of my mindset things talk about leaning into possibility and being curious. I believe that sometimes we focus on the goal, but we don't focus on the hurdle. But I think there's power in recognizing the things that could stop you. What could trip you up? What are the reasons that you might not get your goal? And if you see them clearly and you inspect them, then you can find a way to overcome it. You can find a way to get around it. So the why not us mindset really comes into why not us? Like what is going to stop us? And if it's not a real thing, we can overcome it together and like pull on that same rope in the same direction. The possibility that us as a group, all of us aiming in the same direction, we can be stronger than we ever could be some of our parts.
From that season, the 2013 World Series season, what was a highlight for you if you look back?
Man, I mean, the low light certainly was the bombing that year in Boston, and the city that went through so much and it showed so much resiliency. I think one of the highlights is the way that as a team we really put that on our shoulders and said we're going to go out every day and play for the city. I think there's a civic responsibility that athletes and teams have the opportunity to take on, and that team embodied that civic responsibility in a way that I've never experienced before.
One of the things you wanted to do was play with Team USA in the Olympics. Talk about that journey for a second.
Wow. So the Olympics, I mean, the pinnacle of athletic competition in sport in general. But for baseball hadn't been in the Olympics in 12 years. So that was a dream I never even thought to have. Door was closed. The World Baseball Classic is the pinnacle of international competition for baseball. And, I was the quintessential 26th man on every 25-man roster. So chances that Team USA was interested in me were very low. But Team Israel came along and asked me to play for Israel. So in 2016, the first year in 6 years that I wasn't in the big leagues for the qualifying tournament, I played for Israel and helped Israel qualify to make the World Baseball Classic for the first time. And even though going in, I had very little ties to my own Judaism, very little ties to Israel at all, or no ties to Israel, playing for Israel, it really changed my life. It helped me find my community. It helped me find my place, my own Judaism, my own spiritual identity. So fast forward a few years, Team USA did recruit me to play for USA in the Olympics, and I actually chose to play for Israel instead.
Who were some of the teammates on Team Israel that you remember?
I had tons of teammates. We had Josh Zeid, who ended up being my best friend for a few years. Ian Kinsler, the Texas Rangers Hall of Famer. Danny Valencia, very, very good player in the big leagues. Mitch Glasser, played in the minor leagues for a couple of years. Tons of guys.
What did that team, you had some success though with Team Israel.
Yes, that's another example of why not us, because nobody had any expectations for Team Israel. I mean, they did. The expectations were very low, actually.
I think you talked about how there's like one baseball field in all of Israel, or at some point there was.
Yeah, in 2016, there was one baseball field in the whole country, and Israel was ranked 42nd in the world rankings. And those world rankings encompass all ages. So it's 8 and up, 10 or 8 and under, 10 and under, 12 and under, 14, all the way up to the senior national team. That's 23 and up. There was only 250 players combined of all ages playing in the country when I first started playing for them. Since then, our tournament winnings have made over $3 million that we've donated and built 3 more fields in the country. So participation has increased greatly. But they were calling us the Jamaican bobsled team of baseball. They said that we made up the roster of the Bad News Bears that had no business being in the tournament. And we leaned into that why not us attitude, that collective chip on our shoulder. And in the World Baseball Classic in 2017, we ended up beating Korea. We ended up beating Chinese Taipei. We beat the Netherlands, and we beat Cuba, who was ranked 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 12th in the world, coming from the country ranked 42nd.
When you look back at that, you'd think that'd be impossible, right?
It should have been impossible.
How? So if you look at, I don't know, let's take Cuba, for example, right? A baseball powerhouse. When you look back, how did that happen?
I think there's a couple things that happened. Number one, there was a bunch of American Jews for the first time ever representing Israel. So it wasn't truly the 42nd best country in the world. It was people that qualified to play for that country because of this specific tournament's rules. That being said, none of us would have made Team USA B or C or D or E or F or G, right? None of us would have made Team America Team 17. So what happened was you got a bunch of guys that came together that had this chip on our shoulder. I felt like I had been, overlooked and undervalued in a lot of my career. And a lot of guys shared that mentality, and we came together, and when the moment mattered most, we played our best.
There's a couple documentaries actually on this. One is Heading Home, The Tale of Team Israel in 2018, and another one is Israel Swings for Gold, which is a 2023 documentary. So people can check those out. I do want to talk about, so we talked about mindset. We talked about, teamwork, and leadership. I want to talk about change management for a second, and thriving through change. So when I think about that, I think of a big change for you is your identity is baseball, and transferring out of baseball. So talk about thriving through change in that sense.
Yeah, well, it started with playing for 13 out of the 30 organizations in baseball. Every time you're traded, every time you're released and you start with a new team, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Nobody's seen you succeed. Nobody's seen you fail. You get to make a new first impression all over again. And people in the real world, the corporate world, go through this all the time. There's mergers, there's acquisitions, there's fears with going through new leadership. What's the new budget going to be? What's the new company goals going to be? Where do I fit in? For me, the biggest change was leaving the baseball field, because as much as you want to say baseball is what I do, it's not who I am. What you do is how you see the world reflect back at you. It's how you see yourself in the world. And anytime there's a major change, whether it be, having a kid, marriage, divorce, changing careers, moving where you live, that is tumultuous and it can be hard to deal with. I do a lot of work with companies that are going through mergers or acquisitions. The biggest thing that I've learned through change management is, number one, you have to accept the new reality and you have to step into it. You step into the new reality and see yourself in that new place, see how the world reflects back at you, and then try to buy into the new alignment, the new company goals. Embrace your new teammates. Every time that I stepped into a new locker room, I had to go in open, and I had to go in as the best version of myself and let them see me. Let them see me and try to see them. Because if I tried to be something that I wasn't, nobody can fake it, right? No, I like to bridge these ideas to different metaphors that people will understand. If a kid is trying out for a high school team, whatever sport, doesn't matter. A lot of times there's fear, like, well, what if I don't play my best? You might have experienced this. You're shaking your head. Yeah. I always tell them that if people know what they're looking at, if the coach is any good, if they're worth their salt, even if it's your worst day, they'll know you're better than that. And even if you have the best day and you perform better than you should, they'll know you're not that good, right? They can see your swing, or they can see, if you're a soccer player, they can see your kick, your stroke, your speed. You can't fake it. And that goes for the corporate world too. Like, you can't fake your credentials. You can't fake your sales skills. So just be you.
I'd love to hear some of your favorite managers. I know you mentioned Terry Francona. Before you talk about that, I do want to give a big thank you to David Mamano. David Mamano is how we met. He introduced us. People can check him out at davidmamano.com. I know he talks about lowering stress and creating a happier work culture. But thanks, David, for the introduction. Some of your favorite managers throughout the years.
Yeah, Terry Francona for one. Buck Showalter was another one. Freddie Gonzalez is up there. Clint Hurdle up there. I ended up playing for 11 different managers in the big leagues.
I know the Terry Francona story sticks out. Any others from advice, or you remember a talk before or after a game, or whenever? What sticks out to you with one of the managers in the past?
Well, there's one thing that Freddie Gonzalez said when I was on the Braves, and it was actually after my first game with the Braves, and he didn't even say it to me, and at first I didn't know how to take it, but I later learned how wise it was what he said. I posted about this on LinkedIn recently. My first game catching with the Braves, Freddie Gonzalez says to the media after the game, "The best compliment that I can pay Ryan today is that I didn't notice him." And it might sound
You
like
didn't mess up too bad, is that
right, didn't mess up too bad. But then you think about the position that I play. It's catcher, right? The catcher is kind of the unsung hero. Now, maybe not even the hero. He's the unsung player on the field, right? Who gets all the credit if the pitching goes well?
pitcher?
Pitcher. And that's how it should be, right? That's how it should be. If you're noticing the catcher, either the catcher did something extraordinarily well or he messed up, right? Catcher
Or the pitcher messed up and the catcher
gets the blame, right? Which is fine. But think about what a catcher does. He's calling pitches every game. If he's calling the right pitches, the pitcher shouldn't be shaking a lot. Catcher's job is to understand what the pitcher wants to throw, suggest the right pitches, keep the game in rhythm. So you shouldn't notice that he's doing it right. If there's balls in the dirt, the catcher should block them. That's what you expect. If they miss them, they mess up, that's when you notice. Every pitch, you're supposed to catch it. You're supposed to get the strikes, keep the strikes. If you do your job, shouldn't notice. Keep the game in rhythm. So I learned to appreciate that as a compliment later, what Freddie Gonzalez said. And I think about this from the leadership perspective in the corporate world. The leader doesn't always need to get the credit. If you're putting your people in the right place and empowering them, let them take the credit.
Brian, I'm curious about the preparation, right? When different hitters are coming up, are you studying game tape before the games? Because like I'm thinking in your head, okay, every situation, every pitch, you have to call a pitch, right? So what's the preparation? Are you watching tape? How are you studying before the game to know what to call for? I mean, you're looking at the pitcher's strengths, you're looking at the hitter's strengths. What does that preparation look like?
There's definitely some video watching of how have other pitchers that are similar to my pitcher today, how have they been attacking this guy? Has everybody been busting him up and in? Has everyone been starting him with the curveball and then throwing away? Is everyone just sticking with the off speed? How is the league attacking this guy? How has this guy been responding lately? And then the data revolution in baseball has been, incredible. You get information way more than you could ever use of this pitcher today, his movement profile. How does that play against the general right-handed hitter, the general left-handed hitter, and then this hitter's swing profile? How does that line up against these pitch profiles?
Who are some of your favorite pitchers to catch for? I know the pitchers and catchers sometimes have a special bond.
Yeah. I ended up changing teams so many times that I didn't get to build really long relationships with a ton of guys. My favorite guys to catch, I think John Lester will be the first Hall of Famer that I got to catch on a regular basis. But I think about the guys that were bubble players like I was, that I feel like I really helped take to the next level. So like Matt McRae is a great example. Drew Carlton is a great example. These guys that ended up having, really respectable careers that when I first caught them were stuck in AAA. I love those guys.
I know we talked about managers, and leadership from a baseball perspective. Let's talk about from the business perspective, speaking coaching. Who are some of your mentors in that realm?
Oh man, there's a woman here in Denver that has really taken me under her wing and I have so much respect for and gratitude for. Her name's Jackie Insinger. And that's actually the person that introduced me to David Mamono, who introduced me to you. So Jackie is great and she's so brilliant. And then there's other coaches that have helped me a lot along the way, like the mental skills coaches from different teams where I still take learnings that they gave me as an athlete and apply them to my real life.
I want to talk about, I know you do a lot of keynotes. I mentioned, Harvard, Yale Law School, Kent State. Another one was a gov tech company. And I'd love for you to talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So those university speeches were early on in my speaking. This past year, it was mostly corporate, and I did a lot of annual conferences, sales kickoffs. The one to the GovTech company, their name is actually GovPlace. That one stands out because when the CEO brought me in, she talked a lot about the culture she wanted to create, and she was in her first year as a CEO. Simone, she's incredible. She was brought in to replace a leader who had led with a lot of negativity the year before. So 2 years ago, this company was a mess, and Simone has come in and really turned it around. And the thing that stands out to me is, I checked in with her 6 months after I came in and spoke, and she says, we still use the why not us mindset. We still say every day to the sales team, why not more? And we use the language you gave us. We hit 4-run homers. That's another catchphrase from my speech. And they ended up being voted the best place to work in the DC area this year. And I don't think highly enough of myself to take credit for that. But what I think is that the companies that value their people, the companies that value bringing in education and resources and the types of things that I offer are the same companies that thrive culturally. So I root for every company that I work with. I really keep track of them and I really root for them. And I was so happy to see that GovPlace was ranked one of these best places to work.
Yeah, that's a great story. Ryan, I have one last question. Before I ask it, I just want to point people, you can see here, we're on Ryan Lavarnway's website here. He's got, you can see keynotes here, leadership coaching. So you can check out everything on this page here. He's got a podcast here I mentioned. Benny Fowler as well. So we'll pull that up. But I do want to talk about your book a little bit. Okay.
Well, my kid's book. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Something I'm so proud of. That was a project that I didn't expect. My rabbi actually encouraged me to turn my story into something that kids could relate to. And, that was one of the most humbling experiences I've ever been through to try to get that right. And it turned out to be something I'm really proud of.
So talk about the backstory a little bit. Baseball and belonging. What's it about?
Yeah. So I grew up in a mixed religion house. We celebrated holidays by getting presents and not talking about anything deeper. Baseball was my religion and my family outside of my household. And then baseball ended up helping me find where I belonged in the greater Jewish community. So every time I sign the book, I sign it with what I believe is the central theme is do what you love and find where you belong.
Ryan, I'm going to be the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey, your stories. I know there's many more. And everyone could check out more at ryanlavarnway.com. Ryan, thanks so much.
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love meeting new people and I answer all my own messages. So see you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.